Good evening, and welcome to the election special of Question Time. Welcome to the election special. And tonight, we're in the Oxford Union Hall, and on the panel tonight, the Prime Minister, Dr. Caesar MD, the Leader of the Opposition, WhatsApp 008, the Leader of the National Unionist Party, Britboy3456, and the Leader of the Classical Liberals, Dunks11. And our first question tonight is, what is your vision for Britain post-Brexit? Dr. Caesar MD.
Well, post-Brexit, what we really need is a Britain that's open to the world, that's out there, standing tall, trading with all our partners in Asia, in America, in Europe. We need to retake a lot of the control over our laws, over our borders. We need to reinvest in a lot of our often left alone industries in places like Sheffield, in places like Leeds, that since we've joined the EU have faced significant underinvestment. So post-European Union, we really need to take back control, we really need to invest in our country, and we need to deliver for everyone.
WhatsApp 008.
Well, I believe that we need to, as the people have voted, leave the European Union. But I believe we should take what's the best from the Union and discard what is not right for us from the Union, and take this unique opportunity to grab life by both handles, metaphorical handles I mean, and basically go forward into the world as an independent Britain, and basically stay in the common market perhaps, or have some kind of Norwegian deal, something that will work for Britain, and hopefully when Brexit starts to unfold, we'll see where we stand with the European Union and work fuck off and work for a Britain that works for everybody.
Britboy.
I would like to see, as we leave the European Union, a return to the UK being a world superpower. The UK is a fantastic country, but the EU regulations have limited our abilities in all sorts of industries. Particularly, the NUP is going to be looking into British agricultural policy, and we're going to be looking to leave the EU in all forms, including the European single market, to fully reinstate ourselves as an autonomous, independent and powerful United Kingdom outside of the European Union in its entirety.
Dunks11.
Well, after Brexit, we need to ensure that our country remains open to the world, open to trade and investment. And that means we keep the four freedoms. We keep the seamless movement of goods, services, capital and people across the borders. But that also means that we expand our reach across the world. It means that we join the North American Free Trade Area and seek free trade deals with Canada, the United States and Mexico. It means that we trade with our allies across the world, be they China, be they the developing economies. And from what I can see, it is only the classical liberals who will provide full EFTA and NAFTA membership to ensure that we get the best of the EU and the best of the world.
Okay, I'll open up the floor for debate now.
Can I ask the other leaders here tonight, what is your basis for wanting to remove the free movement of people? Surely it should be the needs of the market and the needs of the country which determines the amount of immigrants that we take, not some political target dreamt up in Whitehall.
We don't want to stop immigration. We believe that immigration actually adds value to the country, and most people that come here add value to the country. We don't want to shut the doors.
So will the Greens be supporting full continuation of the four freedoms post-Brexit?
We support freedom of movement of people, certainly.
And the other three freedoms?
It depends on the circumstances when we leave the European Union.
So there's no commitment there from the Greens to continue to support free movement of capital, goods and services?
Well, as I said, we want to stay in the common market, and we want to have...
So you support all the four freedoms then?
Yes.
Good, right. Can the other leaders answer now?
Well, I know for at least the Conservative Party, we absolutely support the freedom of movement of goods, of services. We want as free a possible trade deal as possible post-Brexit. But regarding freedom of movement, the issue is not immigration. It's not immigrants coming over and taking all our jobs. The issue is that we cannot sustain such high levels of free movement. The country is on its knees in many services, in the
No, it's
NHS,
not.
in our education. Actually, it is, because we are having to throw so much more money to provide for so many more students.
And
so
those
many more
immigrants
people.
pay money in taxes. They help fund the new infrastructure that is needed. They are a net boost to the economy. By taking them away, you don't get more money, you get less.
The issue is not getting more money, it's that where these people are moving to, a lot of them are moving to places like London. And London is an incredibly crowded city. Now, to have such huge waves of immigration means we need to invest far more in places like infrastructure just to get these people around London. We need to invest more in schools, we need to invest more in the NHS, we need to invest more in every service going. Because more people means we need to invest more.
And the money for that investment is more than paid back by the contribution they make to the country and the contribution that the Four Freedoms makes to our economy.
Can we honestly say that it's a one-to-one return? That every person who comes
It's better than
here...
one-to-one. The money we spend on infrastructure is less than the money we gain through the boost to the economy of them being here.
See, this is the problem. You're ignoring the very fact that this isn't just a single one-off investment in infrastructure and there we go, it's all paid off by the people coming here. The issue is we need continued investment year after year after year for every new person that comes here.
And year after year after year, they pay more taxes, they put more into our economy than they take out.
Britboy, what's the position of the NUP regarding free movement of people?
So the issues with freedom of movement are twofold primarily, as I see it. One is the infrastructure, which Matt has already talked about in quite some detail. And secondly, the issue of culture and integration to the United Kingdom's already existing culture, which is not something which happens effectively.
It does. What we want is, what the classical liberals are proposing is a British melting pot. We want every immigrant to take the best part of their culture and to merge it into an overarching British culture. And from that, we will continue to have our culture evolving, because British culture is not one rigid set of ideas. It's not something which is the same as it was in the 1900s, in the 1980s, in any part of time. The British culture of today is different from the British culture of 50 years ago, and it will be different to the British culture of 50 years to come.
And that will evolve naturally from within the UK. We don't need to toss in a handful of Poles to try and spice things up a bit in your melting pot. We need to naturally evolve as a country, as is right, and as our people from Britain would like.
And what about Polish people, the children of Polish people who are born in Britain? Are they not allowed to contribute to that culture now at all?
So you want to close the doors, basically, on everybody? Is that what you're saying?
I don't want to close the doors on everybody, but I don't think that the EU is the right organisation to be extending freedom of movement to. I would prefer that we focus our immigration to immigrants from Commonwealth countries such as Australia or Canada. I think that they have a much more similar culture to us and a much more beneficial culture, and they will be able to contribute much more to our country.
Why not let the needs of the market determine how many immigrants we take, rather than political ideas on which countries we like and which countries we don't? Surely it should be how much our economy needs, which determines how many people can come and where they come from.
I don't intend to put a specific figure on how many people can come, but in terms of where they should come from, we have to consider that there is more than money at stake, which I don't think the classical liberals see at all. There is our culture at stake, which I would say is far more important than whether we make an extra few million here or not.
So you don't say that you should have a specific number. Do you think the numbers coming in are too high, too low, about right?
I do think the numbers coming in are too high.
So you were saying like a few million. Do you not think that the net contribution of people coming from the European Union is a little bit more than a few million over their lifetime? Like, immigrants paying their taxes for their lifetime in this country and actually assimilating in the country like as if they came from this country, do you not think that actually you're a bit short-sighted in what you actually think that people from the European Union can actually add to this country?
I don't think that what you're saying really makes sense there, because surely the people immigrating from Canada are also going to pay exactly the same taxes as the people from the European Union.
So yes, but what is the problem with people from the European Union coming to this country? Because in terms of culture, they're not much different from us, are they? They're still European. We call ourselves European, and they do contribute. I'm not saying we shouldn't allow people from other parts of the world into the country. I'm just asking, why are you being why are you being Europhobic?
I'm being anti-freedom of movement because that's a big risk to be just generically opening our borders. We need to have perhaps an Australian-style points system, which the NEP have advocated in the past, and a system like this to evaluate each migrant on their individual pros and cons for the UK, whether they will be of economic benefit, whether they are culturally fit for the UK, and I don't think that just having a blanket freedom of movement with the European Union is necessarily the best way to ensure that.
So under this points-based system, would potential immigrants from, say, the United States, Canada, Australia be given extra points over a migrant from China, Zimbabwe, or Mexico?
It would not be necessarily to do with the country they are from, but it would be to do with how well they are integrated into our culture. For example, if their first language is English, then that would be a big benefit.
Okay, how do you determine how well they're integrated into our culture before they get here? If they're applying to enter the United Kingdom as an immigrant, then you can't determine how they've integrated.
Well, through measures such as language.
Such as any other examples?
But isn't language not really the most important? Because, for example, some Danish people speak actually better English than some English people. So by saying that people from Canada, from Australia, from Commonwealth nations, which not all of them actually speak English as their first language, saying that I'm going to use your term, culturally fit to be in the United Kingdom, I just don't understand why you're being Europhobic still.
It's interesting you keep bringing up this term Europhobic, but as I say, I'm not saying I have any particular treatment of the European Union that I would like to impose. In fact, you're the ones who are trying to give special treatment to the European Union by having freedom of movement with them. Whereas I'm just saying we wouldn't have freedom of movement with anyone, and we would evaluate each person individually on a case-by-case basis.
So the National Unionists want to abolish the long-standing Commonwealth Freedom of Movement Treaty as well, despite you previously stating that those countries are some of your, quote, culturally fit countries.
Sorry, not with the Commonwealth. We would maintain the Commonwealth Treaty.
So what's the difference between the Commonwealth Freedom of Movement Treaty and the four freedoms from the European Union? If your argument is that we need to have the ability to control who comes in and who comes out, then how can you reconcile support with the Commonwealth Freedom of Movement Treaty and not the four freedoms?
Because the Commonwealth is an entirely different kettle of fish to the European Union. The Commonwealth is essentially, in my mind, British countries, or countries which used to be British and have a history of British citizens, of British culture, and these countries have been developed in a way which is very amenable to the British system, whereas many European Union countries are entirely different, and the way of life there is similarly entirely different.
So a person speaking French can come from Quebec, but they can't come from Paris. Is that the policy of the National Unionists?
Also, sorry, Dunks, to butt in, but you're saying that basically that the Commonwealth or ex-colonies are all developed in a way that's British, as you put it. But how about these countries that are part of the Commonwealth that we raped, sacked, and pillaged and just used as a mineral and natural resource sort of hub, who we didn't develop and are actually third world countries, and you want people that won't assimilate. How are you going? How can you say, oh, we don't want to take people that come from a country that is akin to ours economically? However, you want to take people from countries that aren't economically as developed as ours. So I don't understand. You can either have free movement of people from the European Union and free movement of people from the Commonwealth, but why are you being prejudiced to the European Union? I don't understand. Like you're mincing around words to try and not sound racist, but you do sound racist. I'm sorry.
Again, you're calling me prejudiced against the European Union, whereas I would just say I'm prejudiced towards the Commonwealth, as these are countries which were once part of the British Empire, and that gives us a greater cultural tie. This isn't anything about the European Union. I'm no more for or against European Union immigration as I am, I don't know, Chinese immigration.
So, answer my question. You would allow a Frenchman from Quebec who speaks France but has Canadian citizenship to come into the United Kingdom under the Commonwealth Freedom of Movement Treaty, but you wouldn't allow a Frenchman from Paris who also speaks French to come into the United Kingdom?
Using the Freedom of Movement Treaty, yes.
Right. So it's not about culture because these are both French. It's not about language because they both speak French. So since you want to support the Freedom of Movement Treaty and oppose the four freedoms, it seems to me that the only basis for this is what country they come from, and that is by definition racist.
Here. It just sounds like you want to close the gates on the European Union and try and pursue a populist fallacy that the European Union is a nasty organisation. The people there are coming here and trying to take our jobs. You keep saying it's not about that, but what you are actually saying, you're tacitly saying that it actually is about that. So can we have a clear answer from you? What are your views, and can you stop mincing around? I don't hate the European Union. I just don't want them to come here.
Was there a question there? Sorry?
Yes, why are you so prejudiced against the European Union? Dunks has just pointed out a good example of two people coming from two different countries, one Commonwealth, one European Union. However, you're not willing for the Frenchman to come, but you're more than happy for the guy from Montreal to come in Quebec. So,
well, I'm more than likely to be happy for the Frenchman to come. It just needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
So what criteria will you be using? Apart from language, because language is the only thing you seem to be using right now as a criteria. And we've picked an example, well, Dunks has picked an example, where they both speak the same language, but one comes from Commonwealth, one comes from European Union. Where is the difference?
Well, if these two people are identical, then when we're going to, say, an interview, or we're talking about their experience or what qualifications they've got. We're going to talk to the two people. If we find out that they're identical people, well, sorry, we're not going to talk to the Canadian, but we talk to the Frenchman and we find out that he's a perfect fit to come into Britain, then we're not going to stop him.
But the thing that's an if. The Canadian, no matter if he's never had a job in his life, has absolutely no qualifications, is able to come. But the Frenchman can't. So either you support a French-speaking Quebec person to come, or a French-speaking Parisian to come, or you don't support either. You can't reconcile support with the Freedom of Movement Treaty against supporting the four freedoms.
Okay, I'd like to move us on because we seem to be getting stuck on the same topic for a while now. So I'd like to, unless anyone has any further comments,
I would like to just point something out here, actually. That what we've seen in these past back and forth is that the Greens are now playing mouthpiece to the classical Liberals, spouting any agenda that Dunks decides he wants to put forward. And the NUP are, frankly, muddling themselves into a corner. Because let's look at this. The NUP don't want a fair immigration system, they want a biased immigration system, and it's the same with the Greens and the classical Liberals. Rather than pursuing a fair policy where people are let in on merit, and where people are let in with the skills they have, with the qualifications they have, with their good reasons for coming here, we want to let people in just because they're Canadian, just because they're French, just because they're German. What we actually need is a fair system. No freedom of movement. We treat everyone equally. We treat everyone to the same respect. We don't go saying a French person's better. We don't go saying a German person's better. Because all people should be treated equally. This is the fallacy of the Green Party's agenda. This is the fallacy of the Liberal agenda. We are seeing this push, this constant push to say that the Europeans are better than this lot, therefore we'll have free movement. Or the Commonwealth is better than this lot, therefore we'll have free movement. What we really need, and I'm going to stress this again, is a fair immigration policy. A policy that treats people the same, that looks at people the same, and doesn't say to them, you aren't welcome here because you're French, because you're German.
Right, first off, because me and the Greens are agreeing on this does not mean that they're my mouthpiece. I think when we get onto economics, you will very, very clearly see that we have wildly differing views on that. Secondly, the classical Liberals do want a fair immigration policy. We have made it abundantly clear that if you can get a job in this country, you should be able to come to this country. It does not matter if you're French, Zimbabwean, Canadian. If you're from any country in the world, it doesn't matter as long as you can get a job in this country.
Look, we're going round in circles here. I want to move us on. So we're going to move on now. Our second question tonight is, was the budget a step in the right direction? What's up, 008?
Okay, so there were some welcome additions in the budget. For example, we did not cut public expenditure as much as we feared they would. The budget did provide provisions for a basic income as sort of negative income tax. However, the budget was not fit for purpose from the view of the Green Party, because it cut spending on green projects and environmental protections, and it also cut spending on the poorest in the way of removal of VAT exemptions on goods that the poorer people in society need, on basic staples of life. And the Conservatives even noticed this was a problem for first reading. They had to go to a second reading because they couldn't pass it on that, and they had to offer some kind of rebate concession on that. But it's still not acceptable, and I hope that the voters in the election will see that it's still not acceptable.
Dr. Caesar MD.
Well, would have to say that the budget is absolutely fit for purpose. It not only balances our economy to fix the roof while the sun is shining, it ensures that public expenditure is now more fairly placed, there's less on welfare, and instead we're investing more into key services like education to provide for our young people. We're investing in our infrastructure to ensure that we are truly living in a 21st century economy, and that's already what we've planned to do further after the election. And we're really showing now that if you want to succeed, and if you want to aspire to be greater, if you want lower taxes, then you must vote Conservative. Because as the Green Party's saying, they stay there. We stand there and say, this budget's not fit for purpose, that we shouldn't support this, and you'll see that we won't support this. But at the same time, they're there lauding that, well, the government's prepared to listen. And we were prepared to listen, but the likes of the Liberal Democrats decided they'd play party politics rather than look for the good of the country. They flip-flopped on the issue multiple times, and they'll continue to do that. And that's what other parties are offering at this election.
Doug's 11.
Well, I absolutely do think that the budget was a step in the right direction, a very small step in the right direction. It cut taxes and it balanced, but to suggest this budget is anywhere close to perfect or what we should be aiming for is complete nonsense. Let us remember that the tax rates are still through the roof. Everyday working people are still expected to pay half of their income. Half of every pound earned is taken from you by the state. If anybody thinks that that is a fair solution, that's not for the richest 1%, the richest 10%. That is for most people. So it was a step in the right direction. It got rid of some of the absolute bonkers policies as budget passed, but I mean, it started off with a £160 billion deficit. At the end of the term, the country will be nearly £2 trillion in debt, and that's not sustainable. So, what I would propose instead is a new budget. It will be a completely different budget. It will slash tax rates for everyday working people. It will ensure that we reduce waste in public services and ensure that our country runs as efficiently as possible. It will ensure that we do not run a deficit, and it will ensure that we leave our children and grandchildren a better country than the one we inherited. And that is why everybody who wants a strong economy with low taxes and personal freedom should vote for the classical liberals.
Dr. Caesar MD, would you like to respond to that?
What I would have to say there is that Dunks is right in many respects. The tax rates there's still a way to go. But we have to look at this in a long-term scenario. That we have to accept that we're a minority government. This is only, in MHOC's terms, the third budget that's passed in a long while. So we have to accept that compromises had to be made, that we were a minority government that couldn't just force through our will. Now the issue with this, however, is that it has led to a budget that, frankly, still has a way to go. And that's what we will change after the next election, if we can get through with a majority government, with the support of the people, to say to them, well, you don't have to pay taxes so high anymore, because under a Conservative government we'll cut your taxes. You don't have to fear that our services will be underinvested in, because under a Conservative government we will invest in our key services. We're already committing to key projects like HS3, and we're prepared to accept that we'll push that further, so we'll get HS2 stretching up to Scotland. And these are key investments that the Conservative Party want to make for the good of the country. But a lot of parties will say that they're frivolous projects, we shouldn't accept them, we shouldn't allow them, because they aren't prepared to invest in Britain's future and invest in the people of Britain like the Conservative Party are this time.
I would like to echo a lot of what has unfortunately already been said. But yes, this budget was a step in the right direction. A small step. It did reduce taxes, yes. I was able to secure additional funding for the police department as Home Secretary, and we did achieve targeted funding in specific areas while slightly reducing taxes and achieving a surplus. So yes, that is a much improved budget over the last budget. However, it is by no means a complete step, and that is due to compromises we had to make as a minority government, as Matt has already said, and I would hope that the people of England would use their common sense to vote for a right-wing government, specifically the NUP, are obviously best placed, to produce another budget next term which lowers taxes even further to ensure the ultimate freedom of people and the best for our economy.
Does anyone have any further comments?
I think, on the whole, it's mainly we've all agreed on that. We've all agreed that taxes are too high. But what we need to ensure is that we have a government who will fight till the last to reduce these low taxes. And at the end of the day, I think that only with more classical Liberal MPs will you have a stronger voice in Parliament saying, no, we don't accept 30% tax rates. No, we don't accept a huge deficit. And then we will be able to force the government of the day, whoever it may be, to reduce the tax rates so that they'll have our support. You'll only get that if you elect more classical Liberals to Parliament.
I think we should be responsible with our taxation levels. Of course, those that earn more should shoulder the heaviest burden. I believe that we cannot cut public expenditure too greatly and be unable to fund our public services. We need to ensure that taxation is at the right level, and I don't believe that we should be able to make taxes under 30%, because that would be a move that would be scandalous and irresponsible. But I'm not also advocating for 80% tax rates or 90% tax rates or 70% tax rates. I believe that we should be looking at taxation that is responsible.
But you say responsible taxation, you preach this idea that those with the broadest shoulders should pay the most tax, but then seem to ignore the fact that it's the very poorest who are paying the most tax, because the huge tax rates on our very poor, on the people who struggle to provide in a lot of instances, 50-odd% tax rates are not fair taxation systems. They aren't putting the weight on those with the broadest shoulders. They're putting those on those who struggle to provide for themselves and their families. And I don't see that as a fair tax system at all, and that's why we must bring them down in the next budget.
Yes, the taxation may be a little bit higher at basic rate, but the taxation regime did progressively get more burdensome for those that are on higher incomes, and that's how the taxation system should work.
So, what would be your ideal rates of taxation? What are the Green policies on this matter? What would be the Greens' basic, higher and additional rates?
We believe that taxation should be basically as it is. We don't have.
So you don't actually think that... so you said before we think the taxation rate should be lowered slightly, but then you think that they're fine as they are.
Well,
So you support 30% tax rates?
Well, actually, it sounds more like they're flip-flopping than just what they support.
not flip-flopping.
It sounds like they should have voted for this budget.
No, we shouldn't have voted for this budget because actually it decreased spending in green projects, and then we are the Green Party, if it has escaped your notice. So we actually believe in the environment.
But actually, this budget did invest in a lot of green projects. We put a lot of money into green
You
projects.
you halved spending on green projects. I don't know if mathematics is your strong point, but half is not increasing. Halving is actually less
Half
money.
is still an investment, but aside
It's
from
less
that,
investment. No, it's less investment.
when you spend a budget throwing money into projects, and frankly, throwing it at everything you can possibly see, thinking that'll fix all the issues of the world, well, eventually it's going to come back to bite us, and that's what this budget had to do. It had to balance the books, and so we had to make difficult decisions in difficult areas to ensure that our future generations to come aren't paying the burden of our present generations.
However, I would quite like a planet to live on rather than being able to balance books. The books can be balanced.
So the Greens don't want to balance the budget?
No, we do want to balance the budget, but we want to do it responsibly. We want to make sure
How
that we can.
How you do it responsibly?
Okay.
What will you change?
What I would change, I would ensure that the green spending is protected. In fact, I would ring fence spending on environmental protection because climate change is the biggest thing, the biggest threat we face as a species at the moment, and will face. We can't escape the fact that global warming is actually something that will, and climate change is something that will dramatically change our lives. So I'd ring fence that for a start. I would ensure that the poorest get basic income and ensure that they're able to buy staple items and actually are able to afford the necessities of life and have actually a roof over their head. I would also ensure that we cut spending in areas that we don't need to spend on, but I would cut things such as I would cut the enormous amounts we put into things like sports. I wouldn't cut it by a lot, but I would cut it certainly from the frivolous amounts that we put into sports at the moment.
So you want to take away the fitness of our youth, the health of our youth by cutting our sport?
No, I don't, because we want to focus on sports at a grassroots level rather than paying people that are professional athletes extortionate amounts of money.
We don't. Salaries are paid by private organisations. Football clubs are private businesses.
No, but people that are in, say, an England team for a particular sport are paid out of that budget.
And that's gotten through the England team being sponsored by certain organisations such as Vauxhall recently. Very little of that money actually comes from central government.
But some of it does. So we would aim to ensure that we spend responsibly.
Okay, so we've had a commitment to ring fence green spending, a commitment to basically increase basic income, and we've had a commitment to slightly reduce spending on the salaries of international football players.
Oh, we've cut Trident. Sorry. Wait a minute. we would cut Trident, for example, because we
So
don't
you
need
want
nuclear
to take
weapons.
away... So you'll threaten our security. You'll take away our
Not
last
threatening
line of
security.
defence.
It's not
Actually, it
threatening
is threatening
security.
security. When
No, it's
rogue
not.
states are now developing nuclear weapons, places like Iran, places like North Korea, that will threaten us. When they get the technology to
We
threaten
should be
us, they will
working
threaten.
towards unilateral
Do you think North
disarmament.
Korea wants to work towards unilateral peace? Do you think the events of the recent months and years have shown they want to have unilateral
Yeah, but
disarmament of
when you shun a country and don't talk to them,
shun a country? Is that what
yes,
you're
they're
calling
shunned.
firing missiles over
Shunned.
Japan?
No.
Threatening South Korea.
They're doing it as a result
threatening
of.
Guam
As a
and
result
American
of.
territories.
Can you just let
You
me
call
speak
that
rather
shunning?
than? Can you? No, I'm not apologising for North Korea. I am actually trying to say that we should talk to countries and we should talk to people and we shouldn't shun other countries. We are one world and we should work together.
Okay, so you talk to Kim Jong-un, you say, please get rid of your nuclear weapons. He tells you where to go. What happens then?
No, he tells you to trade with
Well,
them.
then we disarm them. That's how it works.
Yes,
then.
you put pressure on them through diplomatic means. You don't.
Through diplomatic means. Well, go on. Explain to me these diplomatic means that will put pressure
Okay,
on them, because
so
they
you talk
clearly
to-
have cared in the past.
You talk to them, and if they're not willing to accept those terms, then we take action to ensure that they do get disarmed. Because nuclear weapons are something that we don't need.
When you have states like China right on their borders funneling oil money through into North Korea, do you really think it's going to be very easy to influence North Korea's decisions in future?
I didn't say it would be easy. I'm just saying it's something we need to do. And you're the Prime Minister of this country. If you want to stand up and have a legacy, let it be one of peace.
Nuclear weapons are the greatest peace in the past 70 years. We have not had another Great War, we've not had another Second World War, and that is because great powers know that they cannot go to war with each other or they will both be obliterated. There's a reason the Cold War didn't go hot, and that reason is nuclear weapons. They might not be perfect, but they are the best guarantor of our security we have. To abolish them would be foolish. It would be even worse to unilaterally just throw them away, because when we throw down our guns, all we do is say we don't have a defence.
No, because only a few countries in the world have. I'm not going to specify as a number because there are countries that are actually developing them as we speak. But
yes, rogue states like Iran and North Korea.
But not every country has a nuclear weapon. Germany doesn't have nuclear weapons, and I don't think they will. And they are a very big. They're an economic powerhouse, and they are very important on the world stage.
Germany's also in NATO, for example, so they're supported by the French, the British, the Americans, all with nuclear weapons, helping defend German borders, helping defend Polish borders, and a lot of the Eastern European bloc. But North Korea, well, they're not really in any alliances. Who do they have loyalty for?
As I said, we need to work together for unilateral disarmament, and we need to work together to ensure that we have a peaceful world.
We need to work together for unilateral disarmament. Unilateral means Britain acting alone. We can't work together to unilaterally disarm.
Well, we have to
Either
work together
Britain
to
unilaterally
dismantle
disarms.
Everybody.
Working together is multilateral,
Okay,
which
sorry.
won't happen.
Sorry, I misspoke. Multilateral. There should be multilateral disarmament, and we should be the people that lead this.
But who will follow our example when we disarm our nuclear weapons? Who will follow us as we lead this great charge to dismantle the world's nuclear weapons?
We need to get together as a community. You're showing that you have no interest in getting rid of nuclear weapons, and
we
you're just
want
putting.
rid of nuclear weapons, but we want multilateral disarmament. We don't want unilateral disarmament.
Sorry, I misspoke.
Okay, I'd like to bring us on to our next question of the evening, which is, what will your party's priorities be in the next Parliament? Dr. Caesar MD.
Right, well, what the Conservative Party want to do, and what our core focus is after this election, is to cut taxes at all levels to ensure that people can aspire, so that they can achieve, that they can invest in their futures, buying their own homes, providing for their children and their future generations. We also want to cut things like inheritance tax, so that when people pass on, they can leave more to their children and their grandchildren to provide for their futures. We also want to go further. We want to defend our nation, so we will commit to the 2% of GDP spent on defence. We'll also protect our nuclear weapons. And further to that, we'll invest in our infrastructure. Now, this is a very important point coming into this election. Things like our rail services have been massively underinvested in, especially since being nationalised. So our core focus will be to invest in our infrastructure, especially in places like the north, so we can connect up the UK, connect up our northern cities, and create powerhouses in the economy that will rival any other country on earth.
What's up, 008?
Okay, thank you. The Green Party is the party of equality. If you want a party that will seek equality in terms of economic equality, social equality, then you should vote for the Green Party. Our key priorities when we get into government will be to ensure that the inequality gap in this country is reduced significantly. We want everybody to be able to live lives that are not on the streets, that people are able to clothe and feed their children, and that people are not left unable to have the bare necessities of life. We also believe that there is a lot of there's a lot of intolerance in this country, and we would like to ensure that this intolerance is quashed. We would like to make sure that everybody can be themselves, be it ethnicity wise or in terms of sexuality or gender identity or any other thing. We are the party of equality, and we want to ensure that equality is what stays at the top of the agenda. If you're looking at the other candidates here today and the other leaders today, you will see that these people do not want equality on the most part. We are about equality. We are the party of equality, and we are here to protect everybody.
Well, if the Greens are the party of equality, we are the party to protect Britain. We're going to protect Britain's economy. We're going to lower taxes further. We're going to leave the single market and restore full autonomy to our country. And in doing so, we're going to introduce a British agricultural policy to help our farmers. And we're going to work to protect everybody from the ground up. Now, this isn't only economically, we're also talking security. The NUP is going to put a big focus on maintaining Trident and ensuring we meet our 2% defence spending target. We're also going to be protecting the country as a whole. So when I say this, I'm referring to things like historic sites. Lots of these are badly in disrepair, and the NUP is going to be campaigning at a local level to work out where we can best spend money to protect our historic sites and also our environment. The NUP is very proud of Britain's environment, and we will be investing heavily in environmental protections. One final thing which we're going to put a particular focus on is the protection of the family and on family identity. We're going to repeal the Same-Sex Marriage Act. We're going to raise the age of consent to 18, and we're going to ban prostitution. And in doing this, we're going to protect the traditional family unit.
Dunks 11. Oh, sorry, were you finished, Britboy? Dunks 11.
No, that's fine.
Right. What you've heard today from the NUP and from the Greens and from the Conservatives are three different Britons. Three Britons united by one. Either you have social freedom, as is the case of the Greens, or you have economic freedom, as the case of the NUP and the Conservatives. Under the Greens, you don't have economic freedom. You're through the roof. 50% of your earnings are taken from you before you even see them. Whereas with the National Unionists and the Conservatives, all you've got is more socially conservative policies, rolling back the clock on the progress we've made on equality, on gay rights, on immigration. Only with the classical liberals will we have a fiscally responsible and socially tolerant country. The classical liberals will help you to take back your country. And what that means is we will allow you to take back your freedom to choose what you want, your freedom to choose who you want to marry, which means that we will ensure that we uphold the rights of civil unions. It will mean that we will fight to ensure that your taxes are low. It will mean that in terms of Brexit, we will ensure that you and the country get the Brexit deal which is right for us. At this election, the other parties will claim to offer freedom, they'll claim to offer tolerance, they'll claim to offer fiscal responsibility, but it's only the classical liberals who will offer social tolerance, fiscal responsibility, and a chance for you to take back your freedom. On September the 7th, vote Classical Liberal.
Does anyone have any further comments they'd like to make?
Well, in a dangerous world, what we really need is defence of our nation. We must protect our nuclear arsenal as the last line of defence in an ever more uncertain world, especially against rogue states like North Korea that are developing very, very dangerous nuclear weapons and the capacity to launch them to nearby and faraway nations. We must also protect spending on defence with a 10% of GDP, as NATO was recommended. We must also push to make sure our European partners and NATO partners all meet this 2% target to ensure that we are better protected from any foreign aggression and that we act as a better deterrent from any future aggression. If we want to defend our country as well, we also need to defend our economic security. That means we must work to ensure we have energy independence through the investment into nuclear power, into nuclear reactors. They're a very efficient, very practical form of energy generation systems that will make us less reliant on gas and oil from the Middle East and from Russia. We must also go further in investing in the future of our children, so we must educate them better. We must educate them with a more progressive agenda that shows them that the future doesn't have to be so bleak as to always have nuclear arms pointed at our nation. So we must invest in our children, we must invest in our country, we must invest in our defences.
So, it is a very dangerous world. As Matt said, we have countries like North Korea, like Iran, who are developing nuclear weapons and threatening the security of the United Kingdom and our international allies. We've got threats like the Islamic State, Daesh, who, although they have been beaten back in recent months, still remain a threat and who have killed British citizens and continue to oppress people in the region. We have an incredibly dangerous world, and that means that we need a strong British armed forces. That means that we will need to maintain the Trident programme. It means that we will work with our international allies to ensure that Britain and the West and every country that we can get to will stand tall against extremism, will stand tall against terrorism, and will stand tall against states like North Korea and Iran when they try to threaten our country. But security and a dangerous world does not mean that we should give up our fundamental freedoms. While other parties might suggest that we should monitor our citizens' communications, it means the classical liberals will oppose that completely. Fighting terror, fighting rogue states should not mean that you should have to give up your fundamental freedoms to a right of privacy. That is why the classical liberals will amend the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act to ensure that all surveillance of innocent British citizens is signed by a judge, not by a politician. And only then will we ensure that our country is safe and our freedoms are safe. Because if we fight the terrorists by taking away our freedoms, we have let the terrorists win.
Britboy.
I would like to begin by echoing what the others said. This is a dangerous world indeed, and our first line of defence is going to be through the defence sector. So the NUP are going to maintain Trident. We're going to have a minimum of 2% GDP defence spending. We're also going to focus on our veterans while we're working on our defence, with priority housing for veterans and additional fundings and social services for them, as our veterans are a particularly vulnerable group of people. And it's reasons like this that perhaps our army is not as dedicated or as many people would be interested in joining as perhaps could be. So we're going to focus funding on veterans, we're going to focus funding on defence, we're going to focus funding on Trident. However, we must recognise that not only do dangers come from outside, but also from terrorists. These terrorists may infiltrate our country or be brought up in our country in a variety of means, and we need to increase security measures in order to counteract this. So one thing we're going to do is continue to increase police spending and to investigate police reform. We're going to give PCSOs arrest powers, and we're going to continue to reduce immigration. Most noticeably, we're going to end freedom of movement with the European Union and investigate each potential migrant on a case-by-case basis to reduce the chance of dangerous people entering the United Kingdom from the European Union.
What's up, 008?
I believe that the Green Party is best placed to keep us safe. We believe in rehabilitating criminals. We believe that all people have value. We believe that people should be able to work with others to ensure that they become part of the community again. We don't believe in locking them up and throwing away the key. We believe that we should be there to ensure that everybody has a second chance. We believe that the world is a dangerous place, yes, but we do believe that the green philosophy is that we don't punish people forever for things they've done wrong.
Our final question for tonight is, are electoral pacts good or bad for democracy? Dr. Caesar MD.
Well, I personally would say they're bad for democracy. I think that parties should try and put forward as many options as they can. They should try and give the people as great a choice as they can and ensure that nobody's voice isn't heard through electoral pacts and party politics. I think if the people want a government, they should be able to elect a government and not have to base it on whether or not parties are setting up their coalitions well in advance.
What's up, 008?
So, electoral pacts, they are healthy for democracy because if you look in the history of governments recently, we have not had a government that is a majority. We could be facing that if people do make a decision to vote for the Tories, which I hope they don't. But we do believe that working together, getting a consensus of opinions, and actually you pull more of a vote share overall by getting an electoral pact for people is healthy. It's people working together in the interest of the country, and I believe it is healthy for democracy.
Dunks 11.
Well, electoral pacts are a perfectly normal thing in this political scene where every party cannot stand in every country and where the spoiler effect is very well documented. It is important that some parties say, we'll stand aside here if you stand aside here, and that's the way that we can get more ideologically like-minded MPs into Parliament. Of course, there is still the element of the party list, which ensures that everybody will get the party that they want to vote for on the party list. So, in my view, electoral pacts are perfectly fine, because they allow for parties to say, we don't want a fascist or a communist to win. We'll endorse you because you've got a better chance of beating them. But at the same time, we want you to vote for us on the party list as well, because you might want to vote Conservative, Lib Dem or Classical Liberal in the constituency to beat a communist or a fascist, but on the list you might want to still vote for your first party. So at the end of the day, it's perfectly fine for democracy.
Britboy.
No, I don't believe that electoral pacts are a healthy part of a democracy. I must agree with Matt here. The best possible option is for everyone to be able to vote for whoever it is that they want. If we're talking about list seats, as Dunks was, sure, that's fine, but there is a first-past-the-post system for a reason, and you're voting for your local constituent MP. When you're voting for your MP, you want to be voting for the MP to represent you. You don't want to vote for an MP who represents, oh, well, he's not a fascist, he's not a communist, so he'll do. No, you want an MP to represent your voice in the House of Commons and to represent your voice on a local level. And electoral pacts do not allow for this, and so they reduce democracy.
Does anyone have any further comments?
Yes, I'd like to say that we're again seeing this classical liberal green alliance backing up each other's policies as they were before. Now, you preach consensus politics, and that's the system we're in. But what you're showing is not consensus between the people, it's consensus between the top politicians. between those who are going to be the ones getting elected, not those who will be doing the electing. What you're asking people to accept is that, well, we know best. We'll decide our little alliances and we'll say that person's not standing there and instead they'll stand here, rather than giving the people a choice and saying to them, we trust you to elect the people that you think best represent you and your constituency.
That's all very well if you're a massive party like the Conservatives are. The Classical Liberals aren't. We're a very small party. We are probably the smallest party running. So that means that we can't stand across the country. We don't have the resources to. So what we've got to do is prioritise. Say, we think we'll win here, we think we'll win here, we think we can win here. And unfortunately, for some people, they're Classical Liberals and they aren't in that seat. So what we've said is, we think that so-and-so is a good candidate for you here. They might not be a Classical Liberal, but they're close enough, and when we do get the resources to run in all 50 seats, we will. But until that point, vote for them and vote for us on the list. But I think what is even more of a threat to democracy is the fact that we have unelected lords making our laws for us. Electoral pacts pale in comparison to the fact that people sit in our legislature not by popular right, not by the popular vote, but by a right of birth. That cannot be right.
Well, no, there's no right of birth involved at all. There's no hereditary peers at all. Instead, that it's down to merit of the individual.
Party political appointments.
You have to bear in mind the Lords' powers since at least the Parliament Act 2016 at a minimum has been massively reduced and is instead...
They still sit in our Parliament. They still have the possibility to make laws for us.
Provide expertise on legislation and on topics of interest that the average MP might not have experience in. They might not, because we have to bear in mind, how many MPs have an outside job in the field of medicine, have an outside job in the field of science and industry, where they can provide real, proper scrutiny to legislation that comes through those doors? Is it not right that we should give people a better say on our legislation to make sure it works for the many and not for working in the politicians' interests?
Is it not right that the people should decide who makes their laws and not party political appointment?
Well, is that not what MPs are for then? Because the people elected the MPs.
It should be the entire legislature. What we should have is a House of Commons elected through the wishes of the people, and then a Senate of the United Kingdom elected through the counties. So what we'd have is something to say the people can make their choice directly here, proportional to the population, and then we would have an upper house elected.
So what you want is just another layer of politicians. You don't want a layer of expertise.
And lords aren't politicians.
Lords are providing expertise to bills and legislation because they work in outside industries and they have.
So were MPs.
Years.
MPs have had jobs other than politics.
But how many?
MPs come from a wide range of.
But how many still occupy those jobs at the forefront of medicine, of science, of industry, of technology? How many are still?
I don't think a part-time legislature is a good thing.
How many are still up to date in
I want our lawmakers to be
the importance
committed.
of computer technology?
Can I just jump in? Basically, I agree with Dunks on this. But we are not the same.
Surprise,
However,
surprise.
No. A lot of the people that are given peerages on merit are actually people from the lower chamber that make their way up into the upper house, and they don't have expertise. They're just the political cronies of the government of the day.
Does anyone have any further comments?
Yes. So you have a clear choice here between a party of the rightward persuasion and a party of the leftward persuasion. You also have two parties of the rightward persuasion that believe that they demand that you vote for them and that they don't want to work with anybody else. And this is saddening, because electoral pacts mean that the widest political spectrum and the widest amount of people in the electorate actually get a chance to elect someone that has a chance to be in government to make those decisions, and that is very important. And we are very, very, very lucky to have a system of election in this country that allows for small parties and bigger parties to work together in government and deliver what is right for the British people and what the British people ask for. If you vote Conservative or NUP, you're going to vote for a party that doesn't want to work with people, that doesn't want to encompass views from outside their own political spectrum. You want to vote for a party that only cares for the people that they care for.
I'm just going to say that's complete nonsense that parties like us and the Conservative Party don't work with people. For example, you've just seen an entire term of government, and that's something which has not been achieved before, a minority government lasting an entire term. So clearly we are fairly good at working with people. And in fact, what you're saying is just nonsense, because you're saying that you want people to be able to vote for someone to represent them, but that's based on your decisions here in Westminster. You say that you think the Greens voters and some other voters are very similar, so the Green voters should vote for them. But in reality, the Green voter might be 50-50 between voting for the Greens and voting for the Conservative Party. And your decision is by no means democratic. The people should be able to choose to vote for whoever they wish, not for whoever you tell them to vote for. That is not democratic.
Yeah, but that's not... No, you should be able to vote for who you want to vote for. That's why we have the list system. The list system enables people to vote and not feel like their vote is wasted. We think that electoral pacts help people vote for people, help people have the opportunity to vote for parties that are smaller, like the classical liberals, like the independent grouping, the communist independent grouping, and these parties, independent groupings, should be given the chance to be able to get to work with our parties to ensure that a wider range of views get discussed in government.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for tonight. From the Oxford Union Hall, good night.